quite dramatic light show. This is an artist in Budapest. We're getting international now. He gave 3,000 people green umbrellas and asked them to stand next to each other on the bridge over the Danube River so that from the air, if they stood closely together, maybe the bridge would appear to disappear altogether. And then, of course, those umbrellas get scattered out into the community as a reminder of the project, not unlike the thousands of green chairs that are around the Twin Cities that still serve as a reminder of that project. Ned Kahn was commissioned to do a kinetic wind veil for the Twin Stadium in Minneapolis. It was paid for by Target. It cost $1.8 million. It covers up a parking garage. Did Target want the parking garage in front of Target Field? I don't think so. So public-private partnerships are definitely a way to go when you're talking about big-ticket item public art projects. And of course, flash mob events. This is an umbrella flash mob event that Forecast sponsored in honor of Ned Kahn's Wind Veil project last year. And we gave Ned an award and awarded Target a public art award for recognition of the work that they did, and also in hopes of forging a relationship with Target. So there are strategies that you can use to cultivate relationships with the corporate community that have a shared interest as you have of making the city livable and attractive for creative types and employees to draw. Interactive technology. We could talk for hours about that. This is in a movie theater lobby in St. Louis Park. An artist created interactive light organ, and these poles have LED lights in them that are programmed, but they're controlled by touch sensors on the railing around the piece. So if you get people lined up around and we touch the railing, we control the lights that are going on. It becomes like a community-activated light organ. Smartphone applications are now going to take over in terms of helping you understand what is that public art and what can I learn about it, or how can I learn the stories behind it. So there are now iPhone and smartphone applications that are helping people interpret and learn about public art at the site. And eventually our goal is to have geocoding with the projects listed in the magazine and have you be able to access the archives of our magazine when you're standing at the projects where they've been mentioned. In other words, all kinds of information, as well as the idea that you could leave a story, that you got married at this sculpture and you could write the story. It becomes a shared knowledge base about the public art in your community. This is a design. These are renderings. Artists are great at visualizing things that most of us can't quite visualize. And this is another value that they bring to the planning of 2030. If you could look that far ahead, what does it look like? You're going to need an artist to envision this. And artists are already thinking about how to use new technologies like this one, the San Jose Airport, that little video monitors show you what the weather is like in all the places that you could fly to from this airport. It's a fascinating concept. Or a prototype internet umbrella that projects onto the umbrella what's going on around you and maps of the surroundings. You just have to be careful if you're crossing the street not to be looking up at your umbrella. So, you know, I've taken you around the world and then some, and right back to what is public art. Is it a symbol of the city? If it's controversial, is that a bad thing? This was a very controversial project. So was the Eiffel Tower, okay? So was the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. So was the Gateway Arch. Controversy actually might be something you're after in public art, even though you won't know it until later on, say 2030, when the really good projects that have stood the test of time stand out even more so. So I have challenged myself to help the field grow in the next 20 years. And one of the things we lack in this field that you have in some other fields, like in architecture and in some of the fields where you actually have to get licensed to practice. In public art, there is no job description. You could write your own job description. You don't have to have a degree. Are there standards that we could come up with to help guide this field? Now, this is just my stab at it, and I'm very open to your thoughts, suggestions, or challenges. But place art and artists at the center of the public art sphere. Be supportive of all artistic disciplines, permanent, temporary. Consider the common good, our shared environment, and enjoyment by the public. You pretty much can't go wrong if you follow that one. Honor all participants in the process and promote mutual respect. Be mindful, ethical, professional, and open to different opinions. Utilize fair contracts that provide adequate time, compensation, clear scope, and decent working conditions for both the artists and the clients. And if you've ever tried to administer a public art project, you'll know that the working conditions for program administrators isn't that much better than it is for artists. They may have a salary, and right now some of them are out of a job, but this is a field that we both have mutual interest in improving. Documentation, promotion, and criticism should fairly represent the work and be freely accessible for educational use. Now, that's me talking. Not everybody feels the images of their public art should be freely accessible. I say for educational purposes, yes. And the more we go online, the more we find images that seem to be freely accessible. But it flies in the face of some of the copyright control that artists want to have over images of their work. And it's one of the big challenges we have going forward in this field. The content, as I mentioned before, of a public art project should consider its context. Use all materials and technology wisely. That applies, I suppose, to more fields than just public art. Do not commission art that cannot properly be maintained within its appropriate lifetime. What is permanent? It doesn't have to mean 50 years or 100 years or 400 years. A 10-year lifespan for a public art project could be long enough. But it's important to start that dialogue at the beginning so the expectations are shared. And then when the issue of this piece needs to come down, that you don't have this big uproar about who's going to fix it, maintain it, and why should we keep it. We can't even afford to maintain a lot of the collections we have in this country. Be thoughtful when citing a work of art, and don't expect artists to fix every problem or address every issue. So, while economic development might be a big priority of the city moving forward, it isn't just the artists in public art that are going to come in and solve that problem. It isn't just cultural tourism either, but it is something that artists and public art can address as part of the equation. And finally, pursue the creation of high-quality public art with originality, innovation, spirit, vision, and courage, and strike a chord in the hearts and minds of broad and diverse audiences. Thank you. I think I went over my time limit, but I would love to entertain any questions or comments, engage you in a dialogue. Anybody want to take the first chance raising their hand?
I'll go.
I don't think so.
You got the hand mic? That's okay. I can't speak loud enough anyway, so we're just going to go for a voice, okay? So when looking at the city of Fargo, do you find it interesting that with, at least 6 months of the year based in snow, to design pieces that are either temporary or permanently for snow versus going for that ideal green season? How do you begin to address or consider the primary season of winter and that secondary other season we all have?
Well, it's a good question. I would say first, consider who is the audience you're trying to serve. When you're creating public art, it is really important to think about who is the audience for the work you're doing. And if you can, follow that line of reasoning and say there are some spaces that people do actually frequent in the winter outside, or that you want people to frequent outside, Start with that, and then think about what will help that audience feel welcome, feel like this was worth it, I want to spend time out here, and think about the results that you're after in terms of doing that. It's very difficult to invest in public art and assume, especially in this climate, it's going to look the same year-round. It's not. It's going to be covered. It's going to be under the ground. It may be damaged by snow removal equipment. However, temporary projects in the winter, as I've shown at least a couple examples, and in Minneapolis there's the Winter Carnival, there's the Art Shanties program where artists literally get out on the ice of the lake and set up ice shanties that are art shanties. There's a radio station, a karaoke, there's a knitting art shanty, and thousands of people go out in sub-zero weather. Why do they do that? Because it's something to do. I got to get out of the house. It's those moments, though. It's those temporary moments of getting out, not necessarily thinking about permanent fixtures that you necessarily want to create. However, that said, there might be key strategic locations that you really do want to create welcoming outdoor environments. So you simply have to design that in from the outset, whether it's heating elements or lights or icicles, or this is where we shove all the snow in the parking lot. Let's bring artists in. Let them take charge of carving that giant snow pile. Turn it into something more creative, at least for the drive-by audience, that make you feel like even getting from place to place in the winter wonderland, that it feels more like the wonderland as opposed to, I just want to get there. I think this is, again, where you cut artists loose and ask them what would they do and see what ideas emerge. Yes? Mm-hmm. My experience over the 30 some odd years I've been in this field is taggers, graffiti vandalism does not happen on murals. It doesn't happen on artwork. It happens on blank walls. And if you want to not have any, vandalism, graffiti vandalism, yes, get murals on all your walls. And the more complex those murals are, with fewer big open spaces in them, I've been told, the less interesting it is for somebody to try and put their mark in. They wouldn't even see their mark. So you have to think about, there's a division between gang members trying to find their turf with tagging and graffiti artists that are trying to express themselves and are looking for canvases to create. And there's an unspoken kind of code in that subculture that if you can't do something better, don't paint over it. And so from my experience, very, very little vandalism for murals. But again, it is interesting you brought up the point of were the people from the community involved in the creation of the art on that versus just bring in some sort of commercial imagery and put it on there, which might actually be more offensive. Sort of advertising or commercial logos or